All right. Hello. Good evening. We are live. It's good to be here. Another Thursday night, another live stream. And for those of you who are maybe wanting to tune in live or watch later on, I guess we were, starting to watch these maybe on a regular basis. I have made a little tool to help with that. So if you go to my website, ericw.org/live, which, by the way, speaking of, before we get into this, we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We have new products from Sonos. We have new products from Apple, of course. And then we have some other new little things from Philips Hue and Apple and others. And then, of course, my Eufy Cam S3 Pro video just went live earlier today. So I have some follow-up thoughts on that. But anyways, back to my website really quick. So if you go to ericw.org/live, I've added some things here where there's now an ICS feed. So if you're like myself and my wife and my family, nothing happens unless it's on the calendar. In fact, like there was something last night where I forgot to put something on the calendar for that's happening in a couple weeks, like in personal family life, and it created some issues. So my bad on that. But this is now an ICS feed of my live streams. So you can subscribe to that in your calendar app of choice. There's also, this is a Google Calendar, so this is an embedded view of that. So if you don't want to subscribe to it, you just want to look here, you can always look here on this page. Also, there's this button down here, which can add it to your Google Calendar if you're into that. And so you can even go into future months. I basically made it so that tentatively at 8 p.m. my time, we'll have a live stream every Thursday. I canceled it for Halloween. I'll probably cancel it in future nights as well. But I'll change that as it gets closer to like not tentative. And then hopefully also, put the YouTube live link right there in the event. So you can quickly get to the event there, come see the live stream. So that's the calendar and the calendar feed. You can get that at ericw.org/live. And then also some of you guys might not live in a time zone or just not have a life schedule where it's convenient to be here live and submit topics live, and you want to ask a question of a future live stream. So if you want to add your first name to be read on air, you can. Just having your email there helps prevent spam and making it so I can get back in touch with you if I need to. But it could be a good place to drop a question, comment, topic you want us to discuss in the live stream if you're not able to join live. And then if you do want to watch some past live streams for whatever reason, or, if you missed one and want to tune into it after the fact, this is just a quick link over to my YouTube channel's live stream page where just you can get to all that. Of course, you can get to videos and shorts and stuff. We'll talk more about videos and shorts and things later, but just wanted to mention up front that you guys have that new, hopefully helpful tool for getting to these live streams. I'm going to say hi to some of you guys in the chat. There's a bunch of activity going on already. Some of the regulars are here. Saul, good evening from beautiful Hilton Head. Good evening, Frederick. Hello from North Carolina. I'm guessing that's NC. What do you mean there? Good evening from Waco, Texas. Very cool. Nice to have you, buddy. You have a bunch of folks tuning in from Texas last week and this week too. I am always jealous of Texas for having Buc-ee's gas stations. They are so cool. I've been down to Texas a handful of times for various reasons, and every time I go, I love stopping at a Buc-ee's. They are so cool. So you're lucky to have Buc-ee's. Hey, Robert, nice to see you here. Blair from Toronto. Great. We got some Canadian representation. Garrett's from New York, and another Mitch from New York. Nice to see you guys here. Multitasking tonight. Yeah, there's I was reluctant to schedule the live stream on Thursday nights because in the fall in the US we have the Thursday Night Football, which is presented by Amazon Prime. And so I know some people will want to tune into that at various times, but thank you for tuning in here if you're able. And I totally understand if sports of whatever stuff conflicts. Yes, buddy, you're a Buc-ee's fan too, I guess, or it's good Good, I'm guessing, been there. Yeah. Okay. I see you love Buc-ee's. Great. Yeah, Frederick, that's a good point. They do have very clean bathrooms at Buc-ee's, and a lot of selection of food and snacks, more than you could ever imagine. And some cool merch too, just from Buc-ee's themselves, and just like Texas stuff. And yeah, it's a fun place to visit. If you don't live in Texas and you're heading there sometime soon or whatever, go check out Buc-ee's. Yeah, then we'll get into a couple other things on the list for tonight. The first one is something we talked about last week, and that is Sonos finally announced their new Arc as well as Sub Gen 4. So new products from Sonos. They bought at least one, maybe some other startups that had some revolutionary technology around speaker drivers. And it seems like from people who, have analyzed this really closely, that the best we can tell that there's some this sound motion technology that Sonos calls it. It's like this new way to sort of have a driver in a smaller space, from what I understand. I'm not a speaker engineer, but they have a lot of drivers in this. And it's also, compared to the normal Arc, has a much bigger woofer inside of it, which should be interesting, especially because I think they're really advertising this as like a high-end setup that you put with a full-size Sonos sub or maybe a sub mini. You'd already probably have an external sub, but if you don't, for whatever reason, you're not able to, then this is certainly capable of giving you some good bass either way. And they have more upward firing speakers as well. It's can't remember, does it say here how many? But 9.1.4 spatial audio. That is a lot of different channels of audio. So I'm a little confused though with this whole situation. Of course, it's also compatible with the Sonos Ace headphones, if you're not familiar with the existing Arc and other Sonos speakers as well. I don't think they've added the support for all the other soundbars yet. Maybe they have. I lose track of that. But you're able to use Sonos Ace headphones to basically take over the audio from your home theater system if you have a Sonos system, and then you can watch TV and listen to the audio that way. So that, of course, works with the Ultra. But I'm just confused at the pricing and just Sonos product lineup now, because I'm excited for this. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think this is a cool step forward. I will be interested to see how it actually sounds or hear how it actually sounds and see what reviewers say about it. But it's really confusing when you go to Sonos' soundbars. They have this soundbar, the new Arc Ultra, is at $999, and then the standard Arc is at $899. And as best I can tell, they didn't do anything to update the Arc. It's already a soundbar that's getting pretty old in terms of its internals, and it just seemed like it's just weird to have this Arc be only $100 cheaper. It almost felt like, because I think Mark Gurman reported that, I think at one point, that they, which by the way, we should get to some of the topics that he brought up in his newsletter as well. Get to that later in the stream. Mark Gurman, writer at Bloomberg, talked a lot about Apple's smart home strategy in his newsletter on Sunday. And so we'll get to that too. But he, a long time ago, was forecasting that from what insider knowledge he had, that it was going to cost, let's say, $1,100 or $1,200 for this new premium soundbar from Sonos. And I almost wonder if executives, given the backlash around the app and other things, just wanting to please people, maybe feeling a little bit squeamish about selling a soundbar for that much money, that they just put the price to $999, because that's a good mental price of just, it's 3 digits, not 4. It's the most expensive 3-digit price you can have. But then it's sort of like, why don't you make the Arc $749 or something like that? It seems like the Arc original is just kind of sitting there in the product lineup, ready to be replaced by maybe a new Arc or some kind of middle soundbar that's sort of in between the Beam Gen 2 and the Arc Ultra. Maybe, I would have been less surprised and less confused if the Arc just went away, and then they just had this as being the Arc 2 or the Arc Ultra, whatever they want to call it, but sort of like the Arc Ultra would be intended to replace the Arc. But I think there are plenty of people who would want to spend $700-ish on a soundbar who wouldn't want to maybe spend $1,000. And I'm guessing the Arc will still go on sale for those prices, and maybe that's part of what Sonos's logic here is, that they can, push the Arc on Black Friday for something much lower. They've definitely had sales on the Arc before, like around the Super Bowl, they have big sales. So we'll see what Sonos does here, but I found that a little bit confusing about what's going on there with their soundbars. And I haven't done as much research into the sub, so I'm not really familiar with all the benefits of the new sub, but I do know that Sonos does have a new sub Gen 4 that came out with this, didn't they? I thought I remember seeing, I think it was Steve and some other people talking about, yes, the sub 4 pre-order ships on the 29th. Great. Yep, so that's the same as the Arc Ultra, but we'll see. I'm not gonna check this out probably, but it is it's good to see Sonos continuing to evolve their sub line. It's very popular, has a lot of very good, very big time fans. I've been very happy with my Sub Mini. It puts out plenty of bass for me for our needs. But if you're all about your subs and just having a lot of bass, then man, you can have two Sub Gen 4s if you want. And an Arc Ultra has clearly got enough drivers to keep up with that. So this, really is like unlimited money, $2,500, Era 300s in the rears, Arc Ultra and Sub Gen 4. That's a pretty nice sound setup right there. So you got a lot of upward firing drivers in that case for the Dolby Atmos sound above you, which is pretty cool. So anyways, that's Sonos. So we had Sonos release new products this week. Let me see if you guys have anything to say about that before we move on to Apple. Water bottle 365. Nice to see you back here. I'm considering ditching my Echoes and switching to Sonos. I've been holding out to see if Apple comes out with a display to replace the Echo Show. I think Apple's clearly working on a display, and that kind of leads into Mark Gurman's stuff at Bloomberg that I'll pull up as well while we're talking. But it is kind of, I wouldn't count on anything Apple display related at this point. I think that having Sonos gear is completely, I can't think of a better word to say. It's like copacetic with like an Apple ecosystem. It just like you can use Sonos stuff. It works with AirPlay. You can still have your Amazon voice assistant to keep up with your routines there and other stuff you might have set up with the Sonos speakers. So you don't have to sort of cut everything off from Amazon right away. And the Sonos voice assistant is pretty good overall. I've had some issues with it false triggering because of my son's name is kind of similar to the voice assistant name. So with Soren. So it's not perfect, and it's not great at finding those random one-off songs that you want to play. But it's good for like just very simple audio commands, and it's extremely fast. And it's also, Sonos voice assistant is really good for controlling the rooms that you want music to play back in. So you can tell Sonos to play something in this, like add this room, remove this room, whatever, as you're playing music. So that's super nice. And you can have both voice assistants active at the same time. So, you obviously don't get Apple's voice assistant in there. So you're going to have to do something with HomePods or Apple TV or stuff, which, by the way, this is kind of a random aside on that before we move on to Apple stuff, is Apple is clearly working hard on the smart home stuff, because I am really impressed. And I've heard a number of other people say different things like this, that just like, now that I have iOS 18 running on all my HomePods and things, my smart home is really stable and really fast. Like, I am very impressed with the reliability work they've been doing, and especially when you're talking about Matter devices, but in general, I've never seen this amount of just stable functioning stuff in my smart home than Apple did with iOS 18. I think it's really, really impressive. And it's especially impressive when it's a big .0, big release of iOS 18. It's not like, oh, it just suddenly quietly got better in 18.3.4, right? Like it's a big release, and they made it super powerful or super reliable in my experience. So maybe, I don't know if you guys have seen that. If you want to share anything in the chat, we might end up having, of course, the contrary, some sob stories about things that are not working well, because it's there's a lot of different edge cases and use cases for people in smart home tech, and they can't always fix it all. I'm having to answer 3 CAPTCHAs to log into Bloomberg to pull up Mark's newsletter. Okay. Great. Oh, leave me alone. Okay. There we go. So here's the newsletter. This has got to be really boring to just watch me try and navigate. Okay. Now we can pull this up. So Apple has a new smart home strategy, screens everywhere. And Mark Gurman went on to talk a little bit about background. Like, I didn't, sometimes when Mark shed new light on rumors and stuff, I've made quick reaction videos to it and other things. I didn't do it this time because I didn't really feel like there was anything really all that new about this revelation, other than just connecting a lot of dots that had already been revealed before. So, because sometimes in these newsletters, Mark is more an edit, being it's more editorial, and sometimes it's more reporting on rumors that he found. And so it's kind of hard to always suss out, like, what is editorial, what's Mark's sort of conjecture about something versus what is actually like a rumor he found out about this inside info. Of course, they blew a bunch of money, according to Mark. I mean, spent a bunch of money. I still don't think the car project was necessarily a waste, but it obviously didn't result in a shipping product. And the Vision Pro isn't performing probably how some people would have hoped, but I do have more on the Vision Pro in a minute in this live stream. I want to talk a little bit about that. But they've moved some of those people over to smart home tech, and they're making this kind of cohesive home OS underneath a lot of things, and they're doing screens. They're going to have a lower end screen and then a screen with a robotic arm, sort of a fancier one coming later to kind of parallel. Amazon has that with their Assistant, where they have one with a screen that can swivel. So I think Apple wants to do that kind of idea. So we'll see when these actually come out. I think Mark was predicting, is it as early as maybe 2025? I can't remember. Read this a while back. But I wouldn't count on it being anytime soon. But if you think about it, like Apple sells a lot of iPads at $300 right now, and those include a battery in it. And so potentially they could sort of take the same assembly line. I mean, I'm not a hardware engineer, right? But like you could just take the screen from an iPad and a similar casing and run it to constant power, and then you start to have a really compelling product. But we'll see. And especially you wouldn't need all the cameras that an iPad has, because you wouldn't need a rear-facing camera, at least. Maybe you'd want still a front-facing camera for FaceTime. But some components removed, and could probably keep the cost around $300 and keep a nice margin, or maybe go down to $250 or something. So that's Apple's smart home strategy. And, I could go into more details about this newsletter, but I just think it's really refreshing to hear Apple is working so hard on their smart home stuff, and Apple's moving forward and really wanting to make moves in the smart home space, because I think all of us love what they've done so far, but see where it can be improved and can be better. And, the stability I'm seeing in iOS 18, I think, is a sign, a a positive sign. And I think hopefully we'll see some more with some of these new products, maybe in 2025. But I would say if it is probably late 2025 and then maybe into 26. So we'll see. I would agree, says saw 1104 on the reliability on iOS 18. Nothing better than seeing no response in the top right. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, Sirius works great on Sonos. Good to hear, Jeff. Yeah. It's nice thing about Sonos too is that you can tie in just about every music service known to man into Sonos. I'm sure there may be some edge cases. I don't think YouTube Music works with Sonos, but Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Sirius, all kinds of internet radio stations as well. Like whatever you want to put as audio, you can. Oh, hey, James. Nice to have you join. Good to see you here. Can Sonos be the default audio output for Apple TV yet, or do you have to run the sound through your actual TV? Yes, you have to run the sound through the actual TV. The integration that Apple has with the HomePods is very specific to Apple, from my understanding, and so it's not something that you're going to see opened up, unless maybe some government could force them to open it up. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. So now, speaking of Apple. We have some new iPad minis. So the iPad mini with Apple Intelligence, which, they're able to ship this hardware faster than they can ship the software. But getting AI stuff right is, I'm sure, very hard. So take some time to go through all the edge cases so they don't become front page news in a way they don't want to be. Apple doesn't become front page news in a way they don't want to be. But I've been playing with 18.1. The beta 7 came out this week. It's very stable in my experience and works great. And the Apple Intelligence stuff is really nice. I wouldn't consider it quite as hyped up and as big of a deal as Apple does, but it's nice to have. I'm excited also for some of the new things like improved Siri coming down the road. So there's that to consider. But yeah, I think it's interesting with this iPad mini. I'm not surprised about a lot of the release, but that they used the A17 Pro. It seemed like with the A18 that they made for the new iPhones, the standard level iPhones this year, that would sort of be the chip they put in a lot of devices for Apple Intelligence, of the sort of entry level Apple Intelligence chip where they can put it in devices that are not super expensive. The A17 Pro was made last year for the iPhone 15 Pro. It does support Apple Intelligence, of course, but it's made on a process that TSMC is abandoning for making 3nm chips. So my guess is, based on whatever numbers Apple has, like that the number of iPhones, of course, that they sell is so large that they must have such a giant stockpile of A17 Pros that they can continue selling the iPad mini on into the future with the stockpile of A17 Pros and maybe some more made new for whatever reason. And but that it's not going to be so high volume that it'll be a real problem for Apple or TSMC to make that happen. But I guess maybe this was a convenient way for them to use that chip. But it does seem a little weird that they used the Pro instead of the A18. There might be some reasons of maybe graphics power or memory bandwidth that the iPad would need that only a Pro chip can deliver. Maybe the A18 doesn't have enough graphics capability, and maybe that's why they went with it. But I'm a little confused by that. I was going to guess A18 for this iPad, but yeah, it's here. New iPad mini. I've played with iPad mini before. My kids have an iPad mini now that used to be one that I used to play with. I'm not planning on upgrading this, but I think it's great that Apple made one of these and continues to keep it updated. The size is just a really unique size. If you've never held an iPad mini, like play with one the next time you're in an Apple store or a Best Buy or whatever. It is a really cool device to hold. Although, warning, if you play with it, you might fall in love and have to have one. I wish the colors were a little brighter than they are in this, but yeah, new iPad mini. Good to see it updated. And it could also be maybe not the brand new one, but if you're looking to get sort of a home tablet right now, to run, a wall-mounted iPad, so to speak. Probably you pick up a used previous gen iPad mini for probably a pretty good deal now, or used or sort of overstock, I guess you could say, on sale. So keep an eye out for that if you're in the market for it. I tend to find wall-mounted iPads just not something I'm really into. I'd rather have the iPad and use it like an iPad, but it's I'm glad Apple's making a purpose-built display, hopefully, for that. But yeah, that's the iPad mini. A quick note as well, another quick news before we go to the chat and see what you guys are talking about related to this, but Philips Hue added a new feature where you can edit lighting effects in details. It doesn't really pertain to me too much. I tend to do most of my Philips Hue control in the Apple Home app, but if you are into the Philips Hue lighting effects, especially if you have some of their multicolored lights, I think it can be nice to have those options, and now you can customize them even more. And I just like seeing Philips Hue put more effort into the lighting feature of their app. We talked about their augmented reality feature they added last week on the live stream and demoed that here. And so, yeah, it's just good to see Philips Hue putting some effort there. It seemed like for a while they were just going to try and become a security camera company that also sold lights. And I like that they're focusing some more on lighting. So that's that. And let's see. I think Sonos would love to include Apple's voice assistant in their speakers, but I think it's on Apple to sort of make that integration happen. I don't know if Apple would. I think right now Apple's kind of pushing toward having their experience in their own products with their voice assistant being as good as possible. By the way, that's like just such a hard word to say. Voice assistant. Whenever I have to say it in a video, I have to really focus on voice assistant. Voice assistant. Hey, good evening, William. Nice to see you here. Oh, yeah. So my kids are young enough where really most of the stuff we do on the iPad mini is like not really too much hard, any games they would play are not pushing the limits of the iPad. And same as, just playing video, of course. So I can't really speak to the iPad gaming, although last year, the iPhone 15 Pro, one of the things they were talking about, it was, one of Apple's game demos where they talked all about ray tracing and how powerful the graphics are on the A17 Pro last year. So based on that, I think that this iPad mini has some pretty decent graphics. It's also not driving that high resolution of a display, so that helps with gaming. I'm also not the world's leading expert in gaming because I don't do it a lot. I'm not really the world's leading expert in anything, but I don't know a lot about all the details of mobile gaming in terms of what the latest and greatest titles are, or what you want to play there. But yeah, I think one of the new iPad minis would probably work great for a lot of games, and probably be set with it. It also has upgraded USB-C Gen 3.1 Gen 2, not Gen 1, so it gets 10 gigabits, I think it is, of data transfer. Yeah, I agree. Philips Hue effects are awesome, but the Apple Home scenes are generally just so much more convenient if you're using Apple Home. So, yeah, we have some more stuff to get to in this live stream. One is hold on, let me pull up my notes. Oh, yes. Two things. A little bit of a quick rant on just a heads up. YouTube is added on Tuesday of this week, YouTube added a new ability for creators to publish 3-minute shorts. So it used to be for a long time that shorts had to be under 60 seconds opposed to YouTube. Of course, Instagram and TikTok can handle longer videos and have been able to for a while. But I've been working on some other projects for my YouTube channel, as well as this big Eufy video that just published. So I haven't had a chance to finish up any shorts for my channel recently, but I do plan to have more mini product reviews in those shorts of a 3-minute short, because it's a long enough time to be able to say some decent stuff about a product. The problem I found with doing any kind of review in a 60-second short was it's just so short that you end up having to spend way more time than you should on something like that, condensing what you're trying to say into 60 seconds, almost like a TV commercial. Like TV commercials obviously take so much time to be produced because they're trying to convey all these complex ideas in 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever. And it felt like that with a short. And then it also kind of almost came across like you're doing an ad for the company, which sometimes, I mean, you are as a creator and then you say it's sponsored, but other times you're just trying to review a product. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about this 3-minute length for shorts. So I think you'll see some more from me, both recycling content from my long form YouTube videos, but also then making some original reviews of some products where I think that just there's not as much to say about the product as a long form video would have in it. So I'll make those. So just a heads up that hopefully those are coming. I definitely have a lot of plans in that area. We'll see how they perform and things like that. But that's definitely, I'm excited about that Apple added that. Oh yeah, and thank you, Frederick. Click the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. I'm on the fence to switch to Hue bulbs to extend my Zigbee network, but the kids love Nanoleaf bulbs currently. Yeah, I don't remember if do the Hue bulbs actually serve as some kind of a Zigbee router or extender? I just thought they were endpoints on a Zigbee network, but I could be wrong on that. Or, I mean, I guess you just mean like adding to your Zigbee network. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, I think the Nanoleaf bulbs are fine and good as long as they're working well for you. Their Matter ones seem to have stabilized out. You know, that initially there were some more issues, but they got it all fixed in the software updates. In my experience, I have one as my status light outside my door here. But again, Philips Hue is also probably one of the benchmarks of reliability. Like they were usually pretty solid. I don't think you can go wrong either way. It just depends on. Sometimes I think it's generally better with Philips Hue, especially to concentrate Philips Hue in particular rooms, because they have things like the Friends of Hue Lutron Aurora dimmer, or maybe some other accessories that are meant to sort of like integrate everything. For example, if you get like a Philips Hue sync box down the road, well, that can work with a bunch of different Philips Hue lights that might be in the same room. And so if you have like your living room is all Philips Hue and then you get a sync box, like that would be amazing. Or, you know, conversely, if you get the Nanoleaf TV product because you have all the Nanoleaf bulbs in your living room, and it's not always just with the TV integration, it can just be nice because it's easy to get all those bulbs that are the same company and same type of bulb to hit the same color and do the same kind of scenes. Of course, Nanoleaf and Hue both have their own lighting configuration and details inside of their own apps. Of course, Nanoleafs you can actually trigger from an Apple home scene. I talked about that in my blocks review recently. So yeah, I think I would focus more on what brands you're concentrating on in particular rooms rather than anything else. But I think you can't go wrong with either option. I'm sure you're going to find people on the internet saying good and bad things about both options. And, you know, your mileage may vary, but in my experience, I've had good experience with both brands. Oh, yeah. Thanks for joining, Brian. Good to see you here. No worries. And as I mentioned at the front of the stream, by the way, for those of you who joined a little bit later, I've now on ericw.org/live, I have a quick little reference to an ICS feed. So if you want to add that to your calendar, you can. And then it's just shows on your calendar it doesn't mark you as busy. It just keeps it as available time, but shows when my live stream is. And then you can also just add it to your Google Calendar if that's what you're into. And I'll try and add every week the link to the live stream right there in the event so you can see what time it is in your local time zone, as well as just a quick link to add it if you want to, because I was mentioning I live by my calendar, and so does the rest of my family. So can be maybe helpful. Oh, whoops. I don't think I hit the scene. This is what I was talking about. So if you go over here, now I can't control Safari because I'm not, there we go. Yeah. So ICS feed, and then the Google Calendar thing. And then if you cannot watch live for, whatever reason, don't make it that week, or something else, you're not in a convenient time zone or scheduled to watch live, but you like tuning in later, you can submit a question right here, and then that will, I won't share your email on air, but I will share your first name and your question if you want, and could be a nice way to add some questions to this live stream if you're not able to tune in live. All right, so the other thing I wanted to follow up on really quick is my Eve. Nanoleaf, thanks for sharing, Brian. Also, Nanoleaf has been rock solid the past few months, thankfully. Yeah, their Matter bulbs were painful early on. I agree. I mean, it's just Matter was tricky for a lot of companies, I think, early on, but Nanoleaf has straightened it out, and they have good bulbs now. So the Eufy Cam S3 Pro, I did the review earlier today, published that. That was a big review that took a lot of camera reviews are just, there's a lot to them. And it was hard to condense. Like, I cut a lot of things from that review. Like, the initial recording of me talking was like 45 minutes. And then what published was like 15 minutes. So there was a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor with that review. But I think that in the big picture of things, I talked about in the review, I think, spec for spec, why I think this camera is a big jump compared to a lot of other HomeKit secure video cameras, and has a lot of features that you can't find in other cameras. But I think in the meta level, what I wanted to mention sort of in this live stream is just like, that's a big step forward, I think, for Apple Home, because everybody's going to come to, Apple Home as a platform from a bunch of different needs and desires of what they're looking for, the type of home setup they have. Do they rent? Do they own? Are they able to put cameras outside? Are they not? Like, could be any number of different scenarios, but I think that these Eufy Cam S3 Pro cameras, because they're battery operated and they're solar powered and they work with a hub, it means that it doesn't rely necessarily on the robustness of your Wi-Fi network. It's just, if you hardwire it with Ethernet from the base, that's going to be taken care of. And then from there, the cameras communicate to the hub. So that part is solved. You don't have to run wires because it's battery operated. I mean, I went through a lot of these specs in my review, but I just think it's a really big step forward for Apple Home to have these cameras in as an option for people interested in using Apple Home and using HomeKit Secure Video. I mean, as I've talked about before, I think HomeKit Secure Video is a good platform in a lot of ways, but it also has a lot of shortcomings. And as you become more of a power user, you might find you want something else. But I mean, Eufy has a lot to give you there with their hub and their own recordings. So, yeah, I just think it's a solid. It's not meaning it's like everybody here on this live stream must go buy those cameras. But it just means that, like, I just think it's a really good option for a lot of people to fit a lot of needs that Apple Home didn't really have an answer for a long time. And that feels really good to have something like in the ecosystem that, like, when people ask about wireless outdoor solar powered cameras that support HomeKit Secure Video, now there's an option for that. And I just really hope that the Eufy will maybe do the same with doorbells, because I haven't tried their doorbells, but they seem like nice doorbells. And I'm sure if they made some of those work with HomeKit Secure Video, they'd be very popular too. So we'll see. That'd be nice. Oh, yes. Good question. Thanks for following up. Because of everything else I've had going on, I haven't touched this at all. The Ecobee doorbell is still on my front door. So one of these days I will, and the Logitech doorbell is still sitting over there in a bag. I mean, it's also like, it's one of those tasks. It's like, I want to get to it. And like, there are probably some bits of content related to it, but it's like, I'm not doing it for a video. So it doesn't have as high priority as, like, I've already been working on stuff currently in my home for future videos for future weeks. And that sometimes takes priority. So, yeah, I'll get there. I'll let you guys know how it works when I do that. And maybe I'll change my mind, and maybe I'll do the Aqara doorbell, or maybe I'll do the Belkin Wemo doorbell. I just felt like trying the Logitech one. It seems like, Apple's selling that one in their stores, which always says something. But it's pretty readily available in some other merchants, other stores. So we'll see. But yeah, that is it for the stream for today. It's not a super long one, but I am very tired and need to get to bed. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We packed a lot into this short little session. If there are any other questions, though, I'd love to get to them. Mention it here in the chat. Oh, thank you, Mo. Thanks for joining. Good to hear from you. Purchase Eufy cameras with no need to pay for a subscription. Great. Yeah, it is a really good point about the Eufy cameras, that they don't require video subscription, but just keep in mind that is for the Eufy recordings themselves. If you want to do HomeKit Secure Video, you do need to pay for an iCloud subscription in order to get those cameras to store clips in iCloud. So, but a lot of people who probably tune into these live streams and like live in the Apple world, you probably ended up paying for iCloud storage. That's a whole other topic. Like, I feel like Apple kind of strong arms people into paying for iCloud, maybe more than they should. They should probably give everybody more free storage. But either way, if you're already paying for iCloud, then it's effectively no additional cost for that side of it. So just keep that in mind. One thing to point out. But I'm glad you're interested in those cameras. I think they're a good option. I just got the Topo D225 and love it, but no HomeKit. Yeah, TP-Link is a company that has a lot of great cameras too, just like Eufy, but only some of them support Apple. The Topo C125 is one I reviewed last year along those lines. Okay, so Brian ended up going with the Unify G4 Pro doorbell and through Homebridge. Works pretty well. Yeah, you got that e-ink screen on there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I took my Logitech down, I think in part because I had another video about another doorbell at some point that I was doing, and I took it down. I didn't remember it being super reliable, but it's sort of like, that's why I just wanted to come back to that doorbell and kind of reevaluate, like, how is it in 2024? But I don't know. It's not like a high priority on my content, so who knows when I'll actually get to doing that. And it's starting to get colder here, so we'll see. But I've done plenty of doorbell installs in the dead of winter before. So should I wait for vacuum robots in HomeKit or buy one right now? Which functions and features do you expect to be in HomeKit? I don't know. I think they've said stuff about the vacuum power and the mops being both two parts of that you can control, like, is it mopping, is it vacuuming, and suction power. But I don't remember. I'm sure you could probably dig up whatever the Matter spec is for vacuums and probably get a good idea of what Apple's going to actually support there. I have not done that myself, but I still think right now it's kind of a risky move to assume something will work with Apple Home, even though it works with Matter. Like, yes, theoretically, all of that should line up, right? If you buy a Matter compatible robot vacuum today, Apple says they will support Matter robot vacuums. That should all work in the future. However, as a lot of tech YouTubers say, and I completely agree, don't buy a product today based on the promise of future software updates, because you never know what's going to happen with that. And even though a lot of these companies do have official Matter support at this point, or some of them do, there's a lot of them that don't. But I would say a robot vacuum is just a really nice tool to have. There are ways to get them into Apple Home via, if you're into something like Home Assistant or Homebridge, or there are ways to do that. So I would say if you feel like you want a robot vacuum now, there are plenty of great options out there on the market from a bunch of different brands. So yeah, go get a robot vacuum now. If you get one that supports Matter, great, but keep in mind a lot of the ones that support Matter right now, they're the ones that seems like the robot vacuum companies are not putting those on sale, and they're like at the ultra top of the market. And so I imagine as we get more support in systems like Apple Home and other direct support via Matter and other places, I bet that we'll see that functionality come down to more vacuums. But who knows when that'll actually all start to materialize. It could be this year at CES or next year at CES, basically 2025. It could be later than that. So yeah, there are plenty of great vacuums out there today to get if you want one. I wouldn't hold off too long. And there are also something to look into is some of the vacuum companies have like an upgrade program where then you can trade in an old vacuum and get a new one and get like a nice discount towards the next one. Roborock has that. I think other vacuum companies do. So that'd be something to consider too if you're thinking, well, I want to get one today, but it might be that in a year I really want a new one, and then I don't want to get rid of my one I already had. So that's option one. Option two to also consider if you want to get one today is you might have relatives, family members, friends who maybe would love to have a robot vacuum that's lightly used that you could pass off to them, and then it could clean their home, and then you could get the new one and sort of pass it down the chain that way, and help someone else out. So that's another thing to always keep in mind too. But yes, just installed the Aqara doorbell. Great. That's great to hear, Mo. Yeah, it works with HomeKit Secure Video. Great doorbell. And thank you, Colby. Good night. Yes. Okay, there are a bunch of questions here. Let me get to one more. Do you like the fingerprint or home key for your front door smart lock? So I tend to prefer home key. And the problem I have, especially in the winter, and some people like some of my videos, because I just have I have kids, and so I wash my hands a bajillion times dealing with messes from the kids or doing the dishes or whatever else. And so I wash my hands a lot. I don't have very good skin on my hands to begin with, and I do use lotion, but probably not as much as I should. And so there are some videos of mine where people see my dry skin hands and be like, you need to do more lotion and stuff like that, which is true. Like I should take better care of my hands, but like I'm pretty hard on my hands, I guess you could say. And yeah, the problem there is that then in the winter, as my skin gets really dry, the fingerprint on my fingers tends to change over over the winter. And so then the fingerprint stops working. And it's true on Apple's fingerprint readers and other fingerprint readers. It's not something specific to a particular company. So it's maybe other people have the same thing, and you can go and re-register a fingerprint in the lock, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And I can, and for me as a YouTuber, sometimes I just get new locks to test, and so then that solves my problem for me. But usually because of that, and also sometimes, speaking of that, sometimes I'm testing locks that have a fingerprint reader, and sometimes I'm testing locks that don't. So I tend not to use the fingerprint reader much, except for on the U300, where it's just so convenient to your thumb is just right there. So I tend to use it on the U300 from Aqara that just came out. So that's what I'm using it on. But otherwise, I tend to prefer HomeKey. But some people I know love the fingerprint reader. I do think it's a convenient additional option, particularly if you have people who maybe don't use Apple products or whatever reason don't feel like using HomeKey or their Apple devices to get in their home. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people who are opening doors have fingers that they could use for a fingerprint. And so that's something to consider there. It's always, I think it's a good thing to have, but it's not a deal breaker for me and not something I really care that much about. So with that, guys, thank you so much for all the kind words and stuff in the comments. Oh, yes. And that's a good point. There's a lot of vacuums you can use with Siri shortcuts, or the new version of that, just shortcuts in the Shortcuts app. Some of the vacuums, they have older ones that they haven't updated, not Roborock, but Roborock has some good shortcuts. Ecovacs does. And there are a handful of other companies that have shortcuts in the Shortcuts app. So that can be another way to automate your vacuum in Apple products without using Apple Home. Something to consider. All right. I've said goodbye like a million times. Have a good night, guys, and see you next week.